Good morning.
Good morning.
I continue to talk on this book, opening. If you have this book, page 98, the last paragraph of page 98. Usually I talk paragraph by paragraph, but today I talk 4 paragraphs. It's very unusual because it doesn't make sense to separate these paragraphs. So let me read these 4 paragraphs. Usually we think of ourselves as an individual, independent substance, an enduring existence. But if we think about it carefully, this is by no means the case. I have an album of photographs taken of my every few years from infancy on. When I look at it these days, I'm filled with an utterly strange feeling. It so clearly shows the changes I have gone through while gradually advancing in age. How my face and figure have changed with the years. I can only wonder at the marvel of creation. Within this constant change, what endures? The birthmark under my eye, the peculiar shape of my head. Only these meaningless facts remain. And if it is true that I am only what endures through time, then this birthmark and this oddly shaped head are what I truly am. I cannot help but wonder whether these pictures are all of the same I or not. This I is in italicized. Not only the appearance of the body, but the inside as well is gradually being regenerated and transformed. So what does not appear in photographs is also undergoing change. Moreover, the content of my thoughts, which I refer to as I, has also been radically changing from infancy to childhood, adolescence, maturity, and now in old age. Not just that, even this present I is an unceasing stream of consciousness. Yet, taken momentarily at a given time, we grasp the stream of consciousness as a fixed thing and call it I. We are, as selves, quite like the flame of a candle. As wax melts near a lit wick and burns, it emits light. Near the tip of the candle, that appears as a more or less fixed shape. It is this seemingly unchanging shape that we refer to as flame. What we call I is similar to the flame. Although both body and mind are an unceasing flow. Since they preserve what seems to be a constant form, we refer to them as I. Actually, there is no I existing as some substantial thing. There is only the ceaseless flow. This is true not only of me. It is true of all things. In Buddhism, this truth is expressed as Shogyo Mujo, the first undeniable reality, that all things are flowing and changing, and Shoho Muga, the third undeniable reality, that all things are insubstantial. Maybe this is enough. So he is talking about a few paragraphs before, Okumura Roshi quote Buddha's saying from both Nikaya and Agama, that Buddha teach the middle or chu, being apart from two extremes, and one is u and another is mu. And as a Buddhist term, this is called uken and muken. And middle means neither u nor mu. U is being, and ken means view of being. And mu is no or nothing or non-existence or non-being, and ken is view. And often these two are called eternalism and annihilationism. That means, so this u and mu, or being and non-being, or existence and non-existence, is about Atman in Sanskrit, that sometimes translated as self. And anatman means no self. And this Atman, or the self, I often talked, it's something which doesn't change, and that is the only one, and that is the owner and the operator of this body and mind, called the five skandhas. What Buddha taught is only five skandhas, and there's no such owner and operator of these five skandhas. So this Atman is like a, for example, like a owner and driver of a car. When the car is moving, the owner owns the car and drive the car. But when the car, means our body and mind, didn't work, then the owner may sell this, old car and buy new car. This is how we interpret, the transmigration or rebirth. That means when five skandhas dispersed, that means when we die, this owner will buy the new car and be born with a new body and mind. That is so-called rebirth in a common understanding. And what Buddha taught is there's no such owner, only five skandhas are there. Then we have a question about Buddha's teaching about rebirth. What will be born when these five skandhas disappear? Then we annihilate the next life. There's no continuation. So when 5 skandhas dispersed, nothing remains. That is what Muken, or view of non-being, or annihilationism means. And Buddha negates both of them. Then what? We don't really know. Anyway, this is what Buddha taught. So this U and Mu is about the Atman and continuation or discontinuation, life after life. But what Okumura Roshi is talking about here is the changes of his body and mind within this lifetime. So it seems what Buddha taught in the Nikaya and what Okumura Roshi is discussing here seems different. This is about the continuation, life after life. But Okumura Roshi is talking about the changes within one lifetime. To me, it's kind of different. And we need to understand one teaching of Buddhism to understand why Okumura Roshi could apply the same Buddha's teaching to not life after life, but within this lifetime, about our body and mind. I mean, what Okumura Roshi said in these few paragraphs, I think is not necessary to explain. I think we all really experience and understand what he said is true. Things are changing. Our body are changing, and our mind is also changing. So there's no such fixed self within these 5 skandhas. Everything is changing. That is what impermanence and no self which doesn't change, doesn't exist. So I don't think I need to explain this. This is really reality of our life we experience. But this point, how Okumura Roshi could apply this teaching of Buddha to our changes of our body and mind within one lifetime might need some explanation. That is what I'm going to do today. And to think about this, we need to understand the teaching, Buddhist teaching about time. Ji, kan is a Japanese word for time, but in Japanese we have another word for time, that is jikoku. Kan means between two things. What do you call it? Duration?
Interval.
Pardon?
Interval.
Interval. But so this has some length. Time has some length. But in jikoku is like a 11 a.m. This has no length. 10:59,999 is not 11, and 11:00:01 is not 11 neither. So 11 a.m. has no length. These two kind of not idea, but what do you call, are different. And it is important to understand, at least what Dogen taught in Genjo Koan, when he discussed about the firewood. He said, when firewood stay in the position of firewood, and he said, before and there is before and after, but before and after are cut off. In that case, this 11 a.m., this when we talk about this moment, American people said moment has length, so this cannot be a moment. I don't know what the English word, but anyway, what Dogen said using the analogy of firewood, firewood within this moment.
Excuse me, I'm not understanding the word.
Fire.
Fire?
Firewood.
Firewood. Firewood.
For
a piece of fire.
Yeah.
Wood. I put in the fire and now.
Yeah. In Genjo Koan, Dogen said, firewood.
Firewood.
Firewood is a result of living tree.
Yeah.
When we cut the tree and dried it, become firewood, and firewood become ash when it burned.
Yeah.
So Dogen discussed about these changes.
Mm-hmm.
But he said when firewood stay in the dharma position of firewood, there is a before and after. Before it was a living tree, and after in the future it might be an ash when it burned. But he said before and after are cut off, because before the past is already gone. When 11 a.m., 10, 50, 999, no matter how many 9 are there, it's already gone. And 110001 has not yet come. So this is only real time. Past has already gone, so there's no living tree anymore, and there's no ash yet. So both doesn't exist. At this moment, only firewood exists. Nothing there, nothing in the past, and nothing in the future is not there. So that is what Dogen is talking about when he talk about this absolute present moment. There's no such, how can I say, in a sense, story. Before, sometimes in the past, there was a seed, and this seed sprout and grow and become a big trees, and this tree was cut off and dried, split and dried, then it become firewood, and when firewood is burned, then it become ash, and the ash maybe is spread on the ground, and it become part of the soil, and the soil again become part of the tree. So that is how things continues, changing the shape. But that is, according to Dogen, that is a kind of a common understanding about time and the changes of things. But when we really think about the real time, real thing, only this moment is real thing. Otherwise, and this moment has no length. So this is interesting. There's no past and no future. So there's no such things called history. This is only real time, and this is only reality. Past has already gone, so it's not reality anymore. And the future has not yet come, so it's not reality yet. Only this present moment is real time and reality. And yet this real time or reality has no length. That means this is zero. That means time doesn't really exist. Time is our concept, production of our mind. That is one important point to understand the discussion about time in Buddhism, especially in Dogen's teaching. So when we say here and now, this now has no length, and this here has no, what do you call, size. Here is like a dot. It has position but no length, no size. And time has no length. But is strictly speaking, that is what here and now means. Means nothing. Anyway, that is one thing we need to remember about the time in Buddhism. But another teaching about time in Buddhism, about this jikan, the duration of certain time, to I don't know.
Limits.
Pardon?
Limits. 2 limits.
I don't know English word. Anyway, that is the slightest duration of time in Buddhism is called kushana. Very shortest period, unit of time. And it said 1 second has 75 kushanas. 1 second. So 1 kushana is something like, I don't know. Very short time. We cannot feel. And Dogen discussed about this life, this shortest duration of time called kushana. And not only Dogen, but in Abhidharma teaching, within this 1 kushana, everything allows stay for a while, change the shape, and disappear within 1 kushana. And let me read what Dogen write about this idea of changing, arising and perishing moment by moment, or kushana by kushana. He said, in general, he told, this is from Shobo Genzo Hotsu Bodai Shin. Hotsu Bodai Shin is arousing body chitta, or body mind. That is the aspiration for study and practice Dharma. In general, arousing body mind and attaining the way both depend on the instantaneous arising and perishing of all things. This instantaneous arising and perishing of all things means within this kushana. Things are arising, staying, changing, and perishing. And he said, if all things do not arise and perish instantaneously, kushana by kushana, an unwholesome action in the previous moment or previous kushana cannot live. And if the unwholesome action in the previous moment or kushana does not live, a wholesome action at the present moment, present kushana, cannot actually arise. So things are arising and perishing within each kushana. And only the Tathagata clearly know the length of kushana. We cannot even feel, sense the kushana. Maybe we can feel the 1 second, but not, less than maybe, I don't know, half the second. And he continues, Dogen, in one moment, in 1 kushana, young and strong man snap his fingers, so like this. There are 65 kshanas. Although in each kshana, the 5 aggregate arise and perish. So in each kshana, our body and mind are all 5 skandhas arise and perish. Ordinary people never sense it or know it. Of course, we cannot sense that short length of time. My daughter is filming. She's a filmmaker, and last year she came visit here and took a kind of a documentary film. She interviewed me, and she filmed. But it's kind of interesting. Now they don't use film. Of course, it's digital. And what she used is the camera that what they call put the shutter every 4 seconds. Every 4 seconds, and when it moves, we see it continues. So it doesn't need to be kshana. If we take the photo of every 4 seconds, when we see with our eyes, it seems it's continuous movement. But what we really see is a photo of every 4 seconds. This is same as a movie. The film of the movie is independent of pictures. But when it moves, then we can see the person on the screen is actually moving like we do. But we don't really see the how things changes within kshana, because our eyes cannot catch such a short length of time. So everything is changing, not only changing, everything appeared and stay and change the shape and disappear within one kshana, kshana by kshana. We need to understand this teaching of Buddhism about time to understand why Okumura Roshi could talk about the changes of our body and mind, and change about what Buddha taught about life after life. Because life after life, we can see the change. These 5 skandhas are born, stay for a while, maybe 20, 30, 40, 70, 80 years, and we disappear. So we can sense the change. And we are happy when someone is born, and we are not so happy when someone died, especially myself, of course, ourselves. But we don't feel that happiness or sadness within this change in kshana by kshana, because we don't feel that such changes. But that is true. Things are changing moment by moment, or kshana by kshana. So maybe it's interesting to read a little more on Dogen's writing. Ordinary people like us can recognize the length of time larger than a tat kshana. Tat kshana means 10 kshanas. It's still shorter than 1 second, but we can sense the length of time in 10 kshanas. But we cannot really even sense the changes in 1 kshana. So he Dogen calculate, within 1 day and night, there are 6,400,019 times 99,980 kshanas. don't know this calculation is exact or not. But anyway, he did. In each ksana, all 5 aggregates arise and perish. However, ordinary people never sense or know it. Because they don't know it, they do not arouse body-mind.
They do not what?
Because they don't know this arising and perishing is one ksana, they do not arouse bodhicitta. Bodhicitta. Arouse bodhicitta. That, and in the another writing, Dogen says, arousing bodhicitta is seeing impermanence. But because we are not capable to see, the length of ksana. We see continuation, and we don't see impermanence. That's why we don't arouse bodhicitta. That is his logic. So we think somehow we continue. So those who do not know the Buddha Dharma and do not have faith in the Buddha Dharma do not believe the principle of arising and perishing in akshana. So because we cannot sense it, we have to believe, we have to have a faith in this teaching. And if we clarify the true Dharma eye treasury, that is Shobo Genzo, the wondrous mind of Nirvana of the Tathagata, we, without fail, believe the principle of arising and perishing within akshana. And a little later he says, in this way, whether we wish in our mind or not, being pulled by our past karma, the transmigration within the cycle of life and death continues without stopping for a single ksana. So not only life after life, but we are being born and die in each ksana. And we need to believe this because we cannot see. So that's why faith or belief is important. Only Buddha's eye can see this reality of moment by moment changes. But he says, with the body and mind, that is 5 skandhas, that is transmigrating in this manner through the cycle of life and death, we should, without fail, allow the body-mind of ferrying others before ourselves. Ferrying others means ferry like a ferry, the boat ferry from this shore to other shore.
Ferry.
Yeah. I'm sorry for my poor English. That means to help others. So we should take the bodhisattva vow to help others within this ksana. Even if on the way of arising the body-mind, we hold our body and mind dear. It is born, grows old, becomes sick, and die. After all, it comes to be our own personal possession. It means these 5 skandhas are not our personal possession. This is arising and perishing, being born and dying, ksana by ksana. So there's no way I can own these 5 skandhas. That means our body and mind. And a little later, he says one interesting thing to me. He said, while being within this swiftness of arising and perishing, of transmigration in each kusana. If we allow one single thought of failing others before ourselves, try to help others before ourselves, the eternal longevity of the Tathagata immediately manifests itself. So within this impermanence, which is shorter than we can sense, we are being born and dying. But if we allowed bodhicitta and take a bodhisattva vow to help others, then Dogen says, the eternal longevity, that means eternal life of the Tathagata. This idea of eternal life of Tathagata came from the Lotus Sutra. So this eternal life of Tathagata does not, this eternity or eternal life does not mean the length of time. It's more like a quality of life. It's not a amount of time or length of time, but this Buddha's longevity or eternal life is the quality of a life that has no separation with others. And also, I talked about two ways of seeing the time. One is the time which flows from past to the future through present, and another time that has no length. But when we read Dogen's writing, there's another kind of time that is, in my word, I don't know how to call it, but in my expression, this is eternity. That means the time that doesn't flow. From the time of Big Bang, I don't know how many years ago, until this present moment, this is one seamless moment. Such segment, like 1 second, 1 day, 1 week, 1 year, 1 century, and so on, are only production of our mind. And we measure the length. But when we stop doing that, that means when human beings are not here in this universe, the time doesn't flow. And there's no such segment. This is only human thinking or production of our thought. When we let go of our thought, the time which doesn't flow without any segment. This seamless moment, in my expression, is called eternity. So there are three kinds of time. One is a time as our common idea that flows and which has segments. But another next time is time which has no length, only this moment. And another one, the third one, is time which doesn't flow. And what Dogen says is, in our Zazen, when we sit here and now, we are like here, because we let go of our thinking, even thinking about the time. Then when we really here and now, then time disappears. And this eternity, time that which doesn't flow, appear. So within our Zazen, those three kinds of time are all there, all manifesting. It's really a strange and amazing teaching, but because we only think within this framework. So time in Buddhism, especially Dogen's teaching, is very, for us, unusual. And difficult to understand because our understanding is always within this framework. That is my understanding of why Okumura Roshi could apply this teaching of Uken and Muken in our lifetime, the changes within this lifetime, because in each ksana things are arising and perishing, and arising and perishing. So this is the same as continuation and discontinuation, one lifetime to next lifetime. That's why he could Buddha's teaching in about this Wu and Mu Ken to our current lifetime. That is, if we understand that, I think we can understand why Okumura Roshi is discussing about the changes of his body and mind. And so this is not about the Atman or rebirth, but about the continuation and discontinuation of each moment. Whether we continue, our life continues throughout this lifetime, or in each moment it's born and die or disappear. So nothing continue. And whichever view or idea or opinion we take, according to Buddha, that is a mistake. That means if we think something continues, then that's a mistake. If we think nothing continues, that is also a mistake. That is what Okumura Roshi is talking about, using the analogy of flame of the candle. Each moment it's a different thing. Different, what is it called? The wax, the evaporated wax, and a fire, or what is oxygen, working together, and looks like one same shape continues, but actually each moment they are different, and yet it's continued, and yet different or discontinued. So we need to see both. That is what the middle or middle path means. So this is this continuation and discontinuation, and being born and die and reborn, rebirth in the next lifetime is the same thing. So this is how Buddhist or Buddhist teachings see the both continuation and discontinuation of our life in each moment. When we say there's something which continues, that's a mistake. When we think nothing continues, that is also a mistake. So what? If we ask, this question, so what? To Buddha, Buddha's answer is silence. Buddha never answer to that kind of question. So when Buddha doesn't give us the answer, that means it's not important to have some certain fixed idea or opinion about these kind of metaphysical things. Because what Buddha said is because that is not beneficial.
It is
beneficial
beneficial
for us to be free from suffering. Such kind of philosophical opinion or understanding doesn't help us to be free from clinging to the five skandhas. This clinging to our five skandhas, even though there's no such person who clings to the five skandhas, somehow our five skandhas cling to themselves and think this is me. And this me, that is why Okumura Roshi wrote this I with italic, or sometimes I do quotation. This I is a fabrication of our mind, and yet we think this I is most important. So we need to protect this and make this I more powerful than others. That becomes almost the purpose or goal of our life. But this idea, to make this person more, powerful or wealthy or compete with others and become winner, that kind of attitude in our life is, according to this teaching of Buddhism, is based on illusion that has no actuality or reality. Then when we see that, we really clearly see that, that means all five skandhas are ksana by ksana appear and disappear. Nothing really continues as a fixed entity. That is what is said in the Heart Sutra. In the very first sentence of the Heart Sutra, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, when deeply practicing Prajnaparamita, clearly see the emptiness of five skandhas and relieve all suffering. So seeing emptiness of five skandhas means seeing the emptiness of this fabricated I. Then, these five skandhas are simply five skandhas. And that is what we do in our zazen. Even when we sit, within our thinking, we still grasping this is me. But during zazen, we need to open our hand. Then thoughts are still there. But we see this me or this I is a kind of an image. It's not a real thing. Then we see, we don't need to take action based on this I's desire or thinking or view. That is really, tiny thing. But this tiny thing is really important and makes the great difference within our life. The meaning of our life is transformed from the way to make this I stronger, more powerful, and more important, or more successful than because we are always changing depending upon how other things are changing. We are existing and living together with all beings. When other things change, we have to change. When we see this reality of emptiness of five skandhas, or emptiness of this I, then the competition cannot be the purpose or goal of our life. But living together with all beings in peace and harmony is our life. So this transformation about our five skandhas and about our life, the way we are really, is what is called prajna, or wisdom. Well, this is what I have to say this morning. Any question or comment? please.
Professor David Creswell at UCLA was looking at the time lapse,
Time lapse.
the duration of time between a stimulus and a reaction. And he determined that that time is 1/10 of a second, which when a person has practiced mindfulness or awareness, that's enough time for them to make a choice in terms of how they respond. Whereas if there's not that kind of practice, there's not the recognition that there's another possibility. There's only the default reaction.
Right.
So science is beginning to look at the notion of time within very short segments and how it relates to a human being. I don't know if they have this term, Kushana, but it's one of the interesting perspectives that science is beginning to help us see that when we pay attention, we have more options in terms of our behavior.
Right. What we see is not the real thing.
Yeah.
Might be not the real thing. Then we can be free from how we see and think and evaluate. That is our mind production of our mind. If we understand that, then we can be free from clinging to our thinking, our evaluation, our judgment. I think that is really important point of Buddhist teaching. Yes, thank you.
It's wonderful to see how science supports the findings of Buddhism.
Yeah, I think so. Please.
I was looking up the word measurement, meditation this week as I writing a paper. And the word meditation comes from meter, which means measurement, according to the dictionary.
Measurement.
Measurement.
So meditation means to measure.
Yes, and I was thinking,
That's interesting.
I don't understand how it could mean to measure. Well, how is that? And now you just tell me this is exactly
when I talk about Zazen, one thing I often say is Zazen is not a meditation. When we meditate, we need some object. I meditate with the thing. But in our Zazen, there's no object to meditate. We just become, calm down and keep this upright posture and letting go of whatever coming up in our mind. So there's no object to meditate. So often I think Zazen is not meditation. But as a conventional, meaning we have to say, Zen meditation. But our Zazen is not really meditation is something done using our mind. But Zazen is not done by our mind. Of course, when we sit both body and mind together as one thing. So yeah, but English word meditation is a kind of confusion. Please.
That's probably just a comment that it's probably has to do with the cultural roots. It probably comes from Latin, right? Meditate, meter. And so you don't have something like Zazen in Latin culture or Roman culture. So I'm thinking maybe that comes from, maybe they think in terms of meditating on something, like you're saying. It's just language difference. It's so cool.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Anything else, please?
The final word of your last lecture, or final sentence, was I said I was happy, and you said, I'm happy you're happy. My happiness didn't last.
I'm sorry.
The reason for that is that I was trying to anticipate this lecture in some ways all the time that we were between teachings, which seemed like an eternity to me, lots and lots of sounds. So what I tried to grapple with in the break was what the relationship between an Atman and Atman had with untrammeled equilibrium. In order to establish, it seems to me, in order to have a Buddhist mind, you've got to have the ability to be absolutely untouched, or at least not have it impact you in any way. So my first thought was, that just means that you have developed a sufficient mind state to not have anything impact you. That doesn't really meet a Buddhist standard, because you are not putting all of sentient beings ahead of yourself. So that would just be neutral. And then I thought, well, then what you must do is emanate love. And then I thought, that's not equilibrium, because there's always going to be a deficit, unless love is inexhaustible, which may be. And then after today, I'm wondering if equilibrium really doesn't mean the ability to absorb the pain and the suffering, as well as generate love, so that you have a timeless eternity of existence, which would then give you a Buddhist outlook. That's just I'm just trying to put some of the thoughts from the last lecture and this lecture together. Is that halfway where we would be going?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We are already in the halfway. I really appreciate your patience. I feel I never give you the correct answer to your question. Maybe I don't really understand
Well, at least
where your question comes from.
Yeah, my fear would be that I just be met with silence, which would be the Buddhist response. I shouldn't ask the question.
I'm sorry about that. But can anyone answer to his question, please?
I'd like to try. So, you talked about Atman and Anatman, and being unhappy and being happy. And you talked about equilibrium, which kind of imperturbability, being at peace, let's say, imperturbable. And I'm assuming that there's a kind of wish to be at peace and at equilibrium, and that would be the idea of Buddhist way of life. And so the difficulty is how to arrive there at that very peaceful state. And I think, am I
Yes.
on track so
Yes.
far? Okay. And then that, if we thought, for instance, that there was no Atman, nothing that continued, that would be a nihilism. Is that the way you were saying that?
Annihilationism.
Annihilationism, thank you. And then we would probably be very unhappy, because that would mean there's no point to caring about anything, a kind of nihilism. And the Christian way and Hindu way, as I understand it, would be to believe in Atman, and therefore to think that there's hope for everything, getting better, and we have hope for a better life in our next life, and so on. And so if we can't believe either in Atman or in Anatman, then how do we find this peace? Am I still on track?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so, now I've lost my train of thought.
The ultimate issue is then how do we hit that middle ground?
Okay.
That But still, it seems to me that you still have to maintain, if you hit the middle ground, you still have to maintain some form of eternal permanence for it passes through you. All of the skins and the sensory aspects of the world pass through you. They don't exist, but what is it that they pass through? That has to get something based on virtue, which we had the definition of merit to virtue about whatever your last lesson was or lesson before. And so that virtue, what is the purpose of merit and virtue in terms of working with the equilibrium that I think has to be eternal? That's
okay. I'd like to back up a little bit because I wasn't remembering just now that you had talked about experiencing things and love and so on. Yes, and that's part of maintaining this peacefulness. And towards the end of what you said the first time you spoke, you said something like, I'm taking in things from the world. Maybe those things are upsetting. I guess that was kind of implied. All the bad things that happen in the world, the things I'd be upset about, those come in, I experience them, and I respond to them with kindness and love, and that's perhaps a way to maintain equilibrium. Was that what you were asking?
I think that's true on the individual level.
Okay.
What I'm grappling with in my mind is how we move from individual time to the eternal time, and that there has to, Buddha Vista mind becomes the bridge to eternity, which would mean that the middle way would then lean towards some kind, at some point, if you could refine your virtue enough, at some point, it seems to me, you would lean towards the eternal, and that would be the rebirth and the transmigration. It can't all dissolve. I just cannot, philosophically, logically, I can't get there.
Please.
Well, if we believe that everything is connected, the way that he was explaining in the beginning with our usual understanding of there's a seed and it becomes a tree, and it eventually becomes firewood and becomes ash and goes into the soil, and that nourishes a seed and it becomes a tree, and so on. And then everything being connected, we depend on everything. Then, in that sense, then everything does continue because we aren't separate. Nothing is separate. And the Indra's net, where Hojo-san, you've spoken about every little point in the net, every node of the net contains all the other points. Does that help at all? So that, let's say when I die, then I go into everything else. So that's true for everything, I think. Is that any kind of... Am I on the right track?
You're on the right track until the very last.
Could I add something?
Please, go ahead.
So when we die, we become part of everything. But that's true right now.
It's always true.
That's right.
Sure.
Yes.
And in the
Yeah.
same way, the firewood is not separate from the tree, is not separate from the ash.
Well,
And
that's...
let me just explain a larger picture or a larger arc, or refer to the wholeness or the entire cycle. Whereas when we use the word firewood, we're pointing at an 11 o'clock period.
That's true.
Which we remember we went through and understood, oh, that doesn't actually exist. And so in the same way, when we come to this place where we realize that perhaps one of the ways for me to be at peace in this world when there is so much suffering is to allow things to pass through me and to emanate love. Perhaps at that very moment, the difference between me and all of the rest of this collapses, and there is no difference between the truth of love and eternity and me emanating love and letting things pass through me without being perturbed. Perhaps.
Do you have something to say?
Oh, just a side note about the Kashana.
Huh?
I recently saw that at IU Cinema there was a movie playing called 20,000 Days Old or something like that. And I was curious how long that was, so I looked online to see how you can calculate how many days of your life there are. It'd be very interesting to see how many kashanas there are, but it's also such a minute measurement that it's impossible to see. So, what is the point of counting all of that? It was just a side note, to kind of bring it back to the idea of time and non-time, that the impossibility of sensing true time.
Yeah, and the calculation.
And the calculations. It's ridiculous.
Please.
But we like to hear about it. Somehow, I know I can't sense that smaller unit, but I believe you, because I know that that's true.
Don't believe me, but believe Buddha.
I believe Buddha because I already have a sense of it, even though I never experienced it. And to hear about it is liberating.
Please.
Could I add just one piece of what science has to say about this? There's something called the attentional blink in a human being. It's like when you blink your eyes, there's a moment that you're not perceiving visually, and things can change within that moment. So a researcher, Dr. Richie Davidson at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, who developed this program, listen to the name of this program, the Center for Investigating Healthy Minds. So he has this attentional blink is something that, for example, on a computer screen, you can watch a series of letters fly across the computer screen. And your job as the subject is to tap the space bar every time you see a number. So it could be F, G, N, Q, R, 8, and that's where you're supposed to tap, and then it continues. So as that speed increases, numbers will start showing up, but they go by so fast you don't notice. Now, Dr. Richie Davidson said, does it make a difference whether you practice meditation?
Oh. So we can develop their ability.
And that was his hypothesis, that meditators would have a shorter attentional blink. They'd be more aware and be able to see more changes within a shorter period of time than non-meditators. And indeed, that was what he was able to prove, just through a very simple scientific experiment.
That's very interesting.
And to add to that, I love Richard Davidson's work as well. A few years ago, I read Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, and in that, he was talking about micro-expressions in people's faces, that once you meditate or you have a practice of mindfulness or being present, you start to see those little micro-expressions, and that itself feeds into equilibrium as well as connection to others and being open to love, to kind of partly pull it back into how that equilibrium works and not being overly affected by the circumstances of our life, to be able to read others as well as ourselves more deeply.
Thank you for your discussion. It's more interesting than my talk. Do you have something to say?
Well, I was just going to say that in working with audio recordings, which I do a lot, and also with video. We deal in really tiny, tiny divisions of time. For example, I would guess most of you have listened to CDs, you know, of music. We don't listen to those so much anymore because now it's all digital on the computer, streaming and so on. But a digital audio recording on a CD is actually got 44,100 divisions per second. Yeah.
Shorter than picture.
Yeah. And I won't go into why that is exactly, but if anybody's interested, I'll talk to you more about it. And films, when we watch, you know, a film, it's usually 30 frames per second, or 24, but about 30 usually is enough. So
2 cushions.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So anyway, it's just very interesting. And I think I remember hearing that dyslexic people, there's a kind of audio dyslexia where sometimes people would have trouble understanding what's said to them, and that can be because their auditory system doesn't make fine enough distinctions in time. Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.